Maggie Kang. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to be introducing the panelists as they're going up, but quickly a little bit about me. I'm a mom caretaker of my daughter Nell, who will also be on the panel. She has NMOSD. I'm also trained as a physician and has also certified as a life coach. I'm a rare advocate and an ambassador to the Samira Foundation. So I would love to have the panelists come up. I'm sorry, I wasn't actually sure if you wanted them coming up in the order of their... Okay, why don't y'all just come on up and we'll have you all introduce yourselves. Introduce yourselves, and I guess, Elaine, let's start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Sue. I'm a neurologist here at UCLA, and I don't want to take street cred for having NMO or MOG. I don't, but I do have the privilege of taking care of a lot of people who do. And so because we're here on site and some of our panelists are actually people I know and take care of, I get to sit in on this panel and give a little bit of input. So happy to be here, and thank you all for being here.
Hi. Hello. Hello. Okay. My name is Peyton Polk. I am 21 years old, and I have MOGAD. Yes. Mm.
And then, hi, I'm Elijah Mayberry. I'm 22 years old, and I have NMOSD.
Hi there, my name's Nell. I'm 15 years old, and I have NMOSD.
Hi, my name is Yvonne Hacker. I'm 64 years old, and I have MOGAD.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Brammer, otherwise known as Lizard, thanks to Samira, and I'm 41 years old, and I have a diagnosis of MOGAD.
All right, thanks, you guys, for being here. I'd like to start out with the first question directed toward Dr. Elaine Sue. And this is sort of like a nice transition, actually, from the medical panelists we just had. I feel like you started your practice in neurology at such an exciting time, you know, in the space of demyelinating diseases where we now have multiple therapeutic options and diagnostic criteria. But, you know, as we were talking earlier, there are still diagnostic challenges that come up. I wondered if you could just speak about that a little bit more, but maybe more in the context of, in a way that patients can understand their diagnostic journey.
Sure. So as Dr. Kang mentioned, you know, I really had this privilege of training in a time that was very exciting, very dynamic in our understanding of NMO and MOG, where we finally had blood tests, so easy tests to send off that could actually tell us if someone had one of these diseases. I think a lot of people who now have NMO and MOG are people who prior to 2018, prior to our being able to send off these blood tests regularly, probably had other diagnoses or no diagnosis at all. And so I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but I know for Yvonne and Peyton, both of you had other diagnoses that you had sat with for a long time. And I think, you know, that is a really difficult part of having one of these diagnoses. I would guess that it's a very common experience that someone has kind of learned to identify with a certain group and a certain experience, and then to have that kind of pulled out from under them and being told that they have something else can be very kind of shifting. And so that's something that I think about when I'm talking to someone for the first time, re-diagnosing someone for the first time, or diagnosing someone who has previously carried another diagnosis.
So, Yvonne, I wonder if you could share a little bit more about that.
I actually was diagnosed with Sjogren's syndrome, and it was a situation where I was bouncing from doctor to doctor for several years because my blood work did not confirm it. I had gotten rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, Finally, after like 5 or 6 years, the blood work did show positive for Sjogren's syndrome. But the interesting thing with me with Sjogren's, I had a lot of neurological symptoms, more than just the Sjogren's. I had the dry mouth, for those of you who don't know, and dry eyes, which are just kind of classic hallmark of Sjogren's, but I had just tons of strange sensations and nerve pain, and so I always was thinking I had MS because I was just the type to just look to see what was going on with me, understanding early that I needed to be my own advocate. So I still have that Sjogren's condition, and then, of course, now I have MOG.
Right. And Peyton, do you want to share some of your stories?
Sure. So when I was 12 years old in 2014, I was diagnosed with neuromyelitis optica. And for years, that was about, how old am I? That was 9 years ago. 9 years ago. And I've been on prednisone since. Prednisone has seemed to be the only thing that has kept my eyesight. So for me, I've suffered with optic neuritis, and since then have lost over 80% of my eyesight. It wasn't until last year when I met with Dr. Sue, and she said, she looked over my very intensive, very complicated history and said, I don't think you have NMO, and now I'm at 5 milligrams of the prednisone, and I have not lost any sight. I've never gotten down to lower than 12 milligrams. So now I'm on Inspring, and I'm doing IVIG every 4 weeks, and I'm now at 5 milligrams, which is a blessing. Yeah.
That's great. And you know what else is interesting about Peyton is that she actually graduated from UCLA this year, and she's going to Georgia for grad school in the fall.
I am.
And I know, it's amazing.
Thank you.
So this really prompted me to ask you this question, and I want to actually pose this to some of the students on our panel too, is how did you manage getting through your studies and reading and taking your exams while you have this disease?
It was very challenging, very hard here at UCLA. I'm actually here for an extra quarter, and I'll be leaving in August, but I had to stay behind one more quarter to retake a class because I was refused accommodations last quarter due to my visual impairment, and on top of my blindness, fatigue. It's a whole monster, but it's been really, really tough going from a very close-knit, very small high school where they accommodated me and gave me everything that I needed to pursue my academics, and then here where it's been a challenge is kind of like an understatement because it's just been very, very hard. But I've tried my best, and I'm almost finished, so I'm still graduating.
That's amazing. Good for you. Yes. I mean, it sounds like inherent to all of that, you really had to have your own sort of determination and self-advocacy. You had to have your back, and it seemed like you persisted. And really then, I guess it's one of the things that I've also discovered is that there's really so much possibility if you just kind of believe that you can do it.
Yes.
And so I'm really glad for you.
Thank you.
I think Nell has also written a book. It's called My Hospital Story. I just had to put that out there. And in it, she also talks about some of the struggles she has had as a student when she transitioned out of the hospital. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Hello? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so adding on to what Peyton was saying, the transition out of the hospital and back to school was definitely hard. I think especially at a young age. I was diagnosed when I was 9, so it was about 4th grade year. I still wanted to be a kid, and I think getting this diagnosis, I really lost a lot of that childhood self that I used to have. And so when I came back, it was hard because I wanted to be that same kid I was playing travel across like I used to. But then it just kind of hit me when that first day I came back, I was so tired. I could only do half days, and I would take naps actually in like this back room of the library. And I remember feeling somewhat embarrassed and humiliated. There were actually like these little third graders that were in the library that time when I was asleep, and they were like poking at me. A moment I'll never forget. But yeah, it's definitely an adjustment.
I can imagine. And you having mentioned the travel across, I have to bring this to Elijah, who I don't know if any of you guys know. You were so humble to not even mention this, but he's this amazing baseball player at one point who was scouted by the Boston Red Sox. He had a scholarship to go to college to play baseball in college, but then couldn't. I'm going to let you tell your story.
Okay, so yes, been playing baseball for, well, all my life since I was 3, and then once I got to the age of travel ball, been doing it year-round since. Been blessed to actually gain a chance to play in college, and then got my first symptoms about 2 weeks before I was about to start college, when I was sleeping for 21 hours a day, and then I started losing my vision. And then I got diagnosed with NMOSD about, I'll say, like a month after starting college. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Sorry.
I really just find it so amazing that your life was completely upended in every way that I could think could be upended, but yet you found your way back in that, no, you didn't pursue baseball, but you sort of put your life back together, and you seem like you're doing fairly well. And I'm curious to know how you got yourself to a place where you could sort of rethink your life.
And okay, that would be, through Christ. I did started praying more often, not taking life for granted anymore. I say just building that relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
That's what
faith.
helped me through. Yeah, having faith. Exactly.
Yeah. And in speaking about faith, what I've noticed is that people who engage with a community of love and caring, and I think that you probably find that within a church, that I think that has been a really big part of our healing process as well. And actually, so we're not religious and we don't have a church, but actually finding the Samira Foundation, when Samira connected with Nell, was really transformative for all of us. And I think up until that point, I don't think that Nell had met anybody with NMOSD, even though we had asked our doctors about meeting families. I don't know if there was an issue of privacy, or maybe there just weren't very many other patients, but we really struggled sort of in that kind of a loneliness experience of the disease at first. So I can understand how a church community would be so supportive. And then, of course, for Nell, meeting Samira and many of the ambassadors and this huge organization has been, I think, a huge support. That's probably really an understatement. So continuing on with the student conversation, I'm so amazed by Liz. I don't know if I'm going to get this right, but she was diagnosed with what they thought was MS at around 9, and she managed to continue with her life, graduate from high school, college, law school, and then the disease sort of morphed into NMOSD and then MOG, and we'll let you tell more about that. But I just wanted to say, she managed to go through law school and then sit for the bar and become a mom of twins all during this time. So I want to know how you did that.
I'm stubborn. That's why. If you tell me I can't do something, the first thing I'm going to try to do is do it. So, it's really hard when you're a child and you are limited and you're told, oh, well, you have vision issues. You're never going to be a surgeon. Oh, you have this going on. You're never going to be able to do this. You'll never be a pilot. You'll never, be a professional dancer, the things that I was interested in doing. And so I kind of took the bull by the horns and said, I'm not going to let these things go, and I had to change course professionally. But then I realized that I could, use my stubbornness as advocacy. And that's kind of what led me to going to law school. And yeah, I managed to get through college. I dealt with the same accommodations issues. You know, I was homeschooled when I was younger because I had to be taken out of school. So I've had private school, public school, homeschool, regular college, law school. But you know, I love telling my story, and so I can help other people understand that these diagnoses are not the end of the road. There's still so much more, but we just have to look for it and find those silver linings. And to me, you know, being taken off of stage and wanting to do dance and things like that, and being able to parlay that into being in a courtroom and on stage and helping somebody else, really made me feel like I was still doing something. And sometimes that outward reflection it kind of helps you adjust to your own norm, you know, and making sure that other people don't feel alone. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I get that. You know, I feel like we might have touched on a lot of the question that I'm about to ask, but I just wanted to offer it again to see if there was any other insights or stories you wanted to share. So Nell was in the ICU for about 5 weeks when we learned the diagnosis, and she sort of recovered from that very intense acute phase. When we finally got out of the hospital and we got home, I thought, oh, thank God we're at home. We're finally done with all of this. But really, that ended up just the start of all of the challenges that came our way. So I wonder if I could ask you guys, what were some of the the greatest challenge you had in your experience after the acute phase and sort of transitioning back to life?
So really quick, this is something that Nell and I were discussing earlier, and how you have to find your new norm, and how you, for example, being super blind, I count steps everywhere I go. I don't have any depth perception, you know? I can't see a curve. So it's those little things that your brain does to adjust in an ableist world. And that's something that I think that we all have to deal with, whether it's bad lighting or driving in the rain or things like that. And we come upon those limitations, but we figure it out, and somehow our brain manages to help us adjust. But I feel like it's that finding that new baseline and then adjusting to that is the hardest part. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
I think we all can agree to that.
I definitely agree with that. It makes sense, and live it. So I think for me, once I got diagnosed with MOG, it was I was already dealing with a chronic condition with the fatigue and but the whole eyesight and possibly losing that was different. I think for me, one of the hardest things, and I'm still trying to wrap my arms around, is just the unknown. And just that, all those plans that you have, and you're just trying to make sure you don't start living in that what if to the point where it just stops you from doing anything, because you're so afraid that at any time, you're going to wake up and you're going to be completely blind this time, or you're not going to walk. So just coming to terms with that, probably it's just been the biggest challenge. And like I said, being very honest, I'm still grappling with that right now.
Yes, living with uncertainty. Yeah. I feel that.
Yeah.
Adding on to what Yvonne said about the uncertainty piece, I think that the toughest parts for me were, like, coming out of the hospital were not so much even the physical challenges that came with it, but the mental ones. I know we touched on mental health as being really important in the doctors panel, but I think, it's definitely even that's a huge focus, I think, especially for pediatric patients. It was really hard for me to know that, I always had worries that my friends would be moving on without me, feeling left behind because I couldn't go to, even just a friend's birthday party because I wasn't feeling well, or it was too late for me because I felt really fatigued at the end of the day. So just feeling left out and managing all the changes that came with it, probably.
And then, for me, it was more like the physical part, because, I was an athlete, and kind of like, well, before getting diagnosed, I was always out. I mean, playing about 5 to 6 hours a day out in the sun, and then being diagnosed, and then coming out of the hospital, kind of restricting that because I'll be getting fatigue a lot quicker, and then kind of knowing my body, and like I have to stop doing the activities. That was kind of tough on me because I mean I love playing, and then with the whole mental health as well. Well, as you said, like as your friends like kind of leaving you, I did have to go through therapy for about a month, dealing with that, and that was pretty hard on me. So, kind of adjusting just into the new life.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
I think that's helpful for a lot of patients because when we were coming out of the hospital, I really wanted almost a roadmap to know what to expect and what was going to come down the pipe. But thank you all for sharing that. You know, I just want to ask you guys one last question before we open it up to the floor for Q&A. There is this one quote from Nell's book, I might butcher it, but it just came to me by Murakami, and it goes like this. When you walk out of a storm, you are not the same person who walked in. And I want to know from you guys how this whole experience has changed you, if at all.
I can kind of speak to that. I'd say that I always say that I was born just ready to take on the world, and I had this really big outlook on life. I've always loved fashion and design and this world of art, but when I started losing my eyesight, I kind of put it on the back burner, my passion for fashion and stuff, and that's kind of one of the main reasons I actually came to UCLA for biochemistry. I graduated with an art degree, but that's kind of beside the point. I think I was just immersed in medicine, and I got a chance to shadow my doctors and my nurses, and I said, oh, well, I guess I can do medicine, but ultimately that wasn't what I really wanted to do. And speaking back to mental health, I just kind of took myself away from what I truly loved, and I was depressed because I really couldn't understand why. I thought that I was dealing with my vision, or the lack thereof, pretty well. I've always been focused on Christ and my love for God and His purpose for my life. But it wasn't until recently when I learned that the prednisone messed with like your mental health. So I was going crazy because I thought I was like doing a really good job. But I think just focusing on what I learned about myself was actually how special I was when I didn't know that I was for a really long time. So I feel like now I'm kind of on this journey to coming back to myself and really reclaiming who Peyton Ruth Margaret Polk is. So yeah.
Nice. Love that. Anyone else?
I guess I'll briefly talk about that because I came into the storm 30 years ago now. And I feel like, going from a pediatric patient to an adult patient to now I'm a parent and my children are the same age that they were when I got diagnosed, I now see parenthood and completely differently. And I feel like, my medical history, it becomes rote. You just talk about it. You rattle it off. Oh, I was diagnosed in such and such age. But then I look at my own children and I'm like, I was a child. How did I deal with this? And it gives me a new perspective as a parent. And it kind of it gives me a lot to unpack about my own history and understanding myself. Because you don't just look through the world through new eyes, but literally new optics. So
Thank you for that. Yeah, and we could talk for another whole session about how it might inform motherhood, just having had this experience, but we'll save that for the next. We'd like to open the floor for questions. Yes.
I just want to say something. I want to thank Mara. Hold on.
Yeah.
I was a patient. I was misdiagnosed with MS. And the girl, I don't even want to talk, is that Michael? Hi. The girl who's sitting in this room, Erin Fromm, diagnosed me with MOG correctly 3 months, thank God, after I was misdiagnosed with MS just 2 or 3 years ago. And Samara knows I suffered. I was on prednisone for 2 years, and I went to a clinical trial in Boston, and Samara took me in at my worst, and it's a year later to the day almost. And she is so amazing, and everyone in this room, I know Elizabeth, I'm shaking. It's just exciting, and I'm so happy and thankful, and I feel great today thanks to this clinical trial that I'm on for MOG called Rosalindizumab. It took me a year to pronounce, but I just have to honestly thank Samara from the bottom of my heart for everything she's doing for all of us, and I relate to everything you guys have said. Thank you, and I can't wait to hear Erin speak. She is literally the reason I'm here, and this is amazing. And Dr. Patel, my doctor, he's here. I just walked in late. I'm sorry. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Yep.
I wanted to know if after being diagnosed, did your vision go away when you were diagnosed, and after taking on the medication, did any of your vision return?
I think that's different for all of us. I think it really kind of depends on how quickly we get it treated, and also, you know, the severity by the time we get on said steroids or plasma exchange. And I think too, you know, it kind of varies how quickly or how much it comes back. I feel like that's such an individual thing.
Mine was a little different. By the time I saw Dr. Sue, I had already lost some vision. I can't even pinpoint when I had my first attack. I remember having pain. It was during COVID. My optometrist was closed. And as my vision changed, I kept thinking it was just the prescription of my glasses. So however many attacks it was that got me to the point when finally the doctor looked and then he thought it was glaucoma, by the time I got to Dr. Sue, I couldn't even pinpoint to her when it had all happened. I don't know if it had been 1 attack or 2 attacks or 3 attacks, but fast forward to this year, I had what would be a significant attack that landed me in the hospital. Prednisone wasn't working, so I did have to do plasma exchange, and gradually my vision did come back, actually within a couple of days. So I might be a little different from others. It was awesome. Thanks.
Mine. So when I was diagnosed, again, 9 years ago, I actually lost all of my sight, and then I was on I was put on prednisone, and then I was also on plasmapheresis, and a number of different medications. I was kind of like the guinea pig because they didn't know what I had. But ultimately, each time I had an episode, and by the time I met with Dr. Sue, I had 5 or so. I had plasmapheresis, and they spiked up the prednisone as well as putting me on a new medication because the previous one hadn't worked. So somehow my left eye got better, and then my right eye, I lost all my sight in. And yeah, at this point, nothing has been restored. But each time I had an episode, which again was about 5 times, I lost more sight. So for me, it was a gradual sight loss. But ultimately, this is where I'm at right now.
With this being such a hard diagnosis, NMO and MOG, what is one thing you guys all do for self-care to make sure that you're taking care of yourself?
Honestly, get a pet.
So true.
Even in the hospital, I think the main thing that really got me through my days were those dogs that came and visited me. I would always request it every single day, and even if I'm like going in to the hospital like for just a infusion, I always just ask for the dogs. So I would say get a pet. They are just the best way to comfort you after a hard day. So if you are out there, for any kids out there that are watching this, if you have a diagnosis, that's a pretty good reason to get a pet.
I mean, as an adult, I might just say add to cart. But As a child, that was a huge thing for me, was going to the stables and being around horses. Even if I couldn't afford a lesson, just being around animals and kind of having that connection was something that really helped me a lot. There's something about equine therapy, whether you're on the horse or not, you're around this animal and they're trusting you and they're huge. And as a small person, even as an adult, it gives you a sense of control. And there's something about knowing that, like, this huge, powerful animal, if they wanted to, they could trample you. But instead, you have this small little bit of control, and there's something to that. Anyway, that was mine.
I just want to add on to that, but also when you learn to care for an animal, it also helps you learn to care for yourself, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think we've got one more question. This might be our final one.
Hi. So when you do have your episodes, like reoccurring episodes, can you tell, like, if it's more fatigue or maybe more vision loss, like, each time, or like what'll like signal, hey, I have to get this addressed right away? Because I know I think, like, being hot kind of like triggers some back pain for me and some fatigue. So I'm just wondering, like, what'll get you to say, hey, I need to go to the doctor or get treatment. Yeah.
My sight has been the biggest thing for me. It's at a point now where even if it's the slightest change, whether it be good or bad, it's really hard to tell. So I sometimes psych myself out and get a little nervous, like, oh my gosh, wait, did I, especially because I'm so low on the prednisone, which I've never really gotten as low as 5. I kind of, psych myself out and get really nervous, but usually that's the main thing that I look for, or not necessarily look for, but notice, and then I have to run to Ronald Reagan, or Joel Stein.
Well, I think a lot of us talk about, residual symptoms that we experience between attacks. And I think when you kind of notice an uptick in residual symptoms, that's kind of like your, hey, something's going on here. I'm not really sure whether it's an underlying infection, stress, something going on. But usually when you kind of notice those, whatever residual symptoms you have, whether it's from an optic neuritis attack or a TM attack, something like that, but that's kind of your, something feels a little, I know this feeling and this is not a good one.
It is still very difficult because earlier this year, I was having like nerve tingling on the side of the eye that I have the problem with optic neuritis. That had never happened before. And I had mentioned it to my husband casually. And so off and on that day, I was having like trigeminal neuralgia feeling. And sure enough, a couple days later, the pain came. So of course now I know that if I have that feeling, I need to be more aware and not just think, that it's nothing. But the hard part is then that wait. And when do you call the doctor? When do you, hop in the car and get to the hospital? And I think it just takes time of getting to know your body. I guess. I don't know. I think it's just something we just all learn with each attack, it would seem to me. So this 2 days ago, from 4 p.m. until midnight, I had the worst excruciating eye pain, and it was triggered when I walked outside, and and it was bright, so it was triggered by the light. And then it just went away. I had no vision change. A year ago, I would have been trying to reach Dr. Sue, and I would have been in ER. So that's a tough one. You just try not to panic, and but if you're just really unsure, the safe thing is just go to ER.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't ignore it, just pay attention.
Yeah.
24 hours, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
And I noticed I had a relapse when I started my trial because I think I was on placebo. starting to feel pain.
Yeah.
And I had 3 more days till I was going to Boston. I didn't know what to do.
Right.
We waited those 3 days till I got back, till they treated me with prednisone, but I gained my vision back.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I
Yeah.
was a little scared though.
It is
Right.
scary.
Yeah.
So you do have to kind of, I'm just glad to see that even waiting 3 days, I was okay.
Well,
I
thank
even had
you.
less
Done that
steroids
too.
than I usually do, so it's all
Right.
good. But it's a matter of really knowing your body, I think, too.
Yes.
Right.
Well, thank you guys. I'm so glad that you were here today. Let's give it up for our
Thank you.
panelists.